Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. I'm here to welcome you into the world of orgasmic living by hosting experts to discuss orgasmic topics such as nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Here, we will offer lifestyle lessons that can help you lead a fulfilling, joyous, and orgasmic lifestyle. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to the 60th episode of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara. In this Beaver Moon episode, we'll be speaking with Dr. Jody Carrington, best-selling author of Feeling Seen, Reconnecting in a Disconnected World. We'll also be reviewing the book Live, Laugh, Find True Love, a step-by-step guide to finding a meaningful relationship by future guest Sarah Intelligator, who is a divorce attorney. And finally, we'll be experiencing a guided meditation for feeling seen and heard. But first, let me share with you my experience with feeling seen and heard. It's so important to feel seen and heard. As a content creator, sometimes I don't feel seen or heard, even though you're listening to me making this episode right now. But you have to imagine that I am sitting in my empty lounge. I'm still wearing my pajamas and I've got no makeup on, haven't had a shower yet. I'm alone, speaking to the wall. And sometimes I'm not aware that my content is actually being seen and noticed. But then when I get some comments or feedback, I'm like, wow. But it's like, at the same time, I think it's good to make content thinking in the way that you would make it if no one was listening. You know, it's similar to that expression, dance like no one's watching. So I try to make content like no one's listening or no one's reading, to try and really tap into what is my authentic self, my authentic expression. Because I do ask myself why a lot. You know, when you're making certain types of content, what's the why behind it? Are you doing it for likes? Are you doing it for validation? Or are you doing it as an expression, an authentic expression? Are you doing it to inspire others? So I want to be as authentic as possible and not really think about the validation or likes, but just obviously be happy about any positive impact it's going to have on someone. But ultimately, it's about having an authentic expression, which will hopefully inspire others as well. I think feeling seen is a concept that is so key in many parts of our lives, especially in our work. I know for me, when I see that there is an increase of views or downloads or something like that, it definitely feels it's not just flattering to my ego. I can't deny that part is real. But it's also an affirmation, a confirmation that I'm on the right path. And I'm very, very grateful for those signs, because it's like saying you're doing the right thing. Because sometimes when you're a freelancer, it's just very confusing. You have to kind of, it's a constant struggle. And sometimes having that guidance affirmation is very, very, very encouraging just to keep going. And feeling seen, I felt most of my life I've actually felt invisible. So I think it's very important for me. I think feeling seen is a big part of what has seduced me in different situations. Feeling seen, acknowledged for who I really am. Because I think a lot of the times in my life, in the past when I was younger, I kind of didn't feel conventional. I felt like a misfit. And at first, when I was in my teenage years, that was troublesome for me because I wanted to fit in. Whereas now, with time, age, wisdom, and experience, I acknowledge that standing out is probably a better quality to have, to have certain traits that make you unforgettable and very, very much seen. And just by being who you really are. And I think by being who you really are, then you will inspire others. I mean, for me, when I was in my 20s, I just wanted to have a normal job, be in a company that would acknowledge me and reward me for my hard work and enthusiasm. But the universe had different ideas for me, and I was in real estate. I remember I was working late a lot, writing property descriptions, and I was quite good at my job because I was very honest with my clients, and people used to ring up and say, "I want to see these apartments," and they would tell me a list of 10 different references, and I would say, "What are you looking for?" And then I would just really kind of make a short list and say, "Well, this one's got terrible lighting, this one's got a bad stairwell," just based on what they wanted. And people really respected me for that because of my authenticity, because that's not something that is known for in the real estate profession, unfortunately. So once I kind of gained people's trust, then that kind of helped me to be to be responsible for 80% of the operations in our office, even though that was not enough because it was the crisis at the time. But I just wanted to, be good at that, get my money, and have a nice time walking around apartments. But now when I think about what I'm doing now, it's way more fulfilling because I know the topic of sexuality, intimacy, and relationships are the topics that really move us. And those are the topics that are so taboo for so many, so uncomfortable. And these are the topics that influence a lot of our life decisions, and yet we don't talk about them. And that's a huge mistake. So I'm trying to change that with my participation in content creation and creating space for the conversations that I have on this podcast. And also feeling seen in terms of relationships. I think for me, feeling seen has always been a huge element of seduction. When someone sees who I really am and appreciates it, that goes for friendships as well as intimate relationships. And it's so important to maintain this feeling of being seen, not just to feel seen yourself, but to see others and really, get to know someone on a deeper level and know what's making them tick and how they're feeling today, what their challenges are, and how to encourage them. Because I think once you stop seeing your partner, or your partner stops seeing you, then you're in a very vulnerable position to stray. And that's the kind of reality of life. I think sometimes when you'll get into, let's say a mundane, monotonous phase of your relationship, and then suddenly someone you like or someone starts paying attention to you, laughing at your jokes, and seeing you in a way that you've not been seen since the beginning of your relationship, then that can potentially lead to an infidelity. So that made me kind of read this book a little bit closer and just think, wow, we have to really appreciate those who are important to us and maintain that energy of feeling seen and seeing others as well, because it's definitely a two-way street. And our guest today, Dr. Jody Carrington, is the author of the best-selling book, Feeling Seen, Reconnecting in a Disconnected World. And I read it last week when I went to Rome. Rome was so cool. I had the best time ever. I got a flight from Barcelona for €60 return. And I thought, I've been wanting to make the most of my situation a little bit more, my situation of being self-employed, which also has great advantages apart from the daily struggle. The flexibility is incredible. It's not something that I have made the most of enough. I really want to be able to pop to Barcelona airport and go to different destinations, because in Europe we have this incredible advantage that we are close to different civilizations. We are so close to places that have different foods, different cultures, different languages, and it's relatively cheap to fly there. And I read this book, so I was kind of like I'm kind of like trying to step into my ideal life by just making it happen now, rather than thinking about it as something far away in the future. And that's something I wanted to do for a long time. And I was reading this book on the plane, and just the concept of feeling seen is becoming kind of a theme in my life at the moment. And it impacted me in the way that, for example, I was walking through Rome and lots of people were trying to, they spotted me as a tourist, a target for selling me things that I don't need. And, in the past, I would have just gone, no, just ignored people and carried on walking. But in this time, I actually looked people in the eye and smiled and said, no, thanks, because I think we have this sensation sometimes, I'll leave me alone, I'm just walking here. But at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to make a living and doing what they can. And I think it's nice to acknowledge all the people who are across our paths in the day. I mean, I try to be very polite to the people who serve me in restaurants, everyone the people who deliver my Amazon books, anyone. And I think that's the kind of experience I want to have in life. I want people to have good experiences with me and with my energy. Not just people who are intimate with me, of course, but also anyone who crosses my path. I want them to have a good experience with me, and I want them to feel seen and spread my smiles, because it's so important. And a smile is something that comes from the last book I read about the Kunlun system. They were talking about how important smiling is and how it's really good for opening up your facial muscles, your crown, and all of this. I think a smile is something that's incredible for helping others to feel seen and just being able to radiate good energy. But let's go back to love. Anyway, there's a great definition of love here. There's a great page 69. What a coincidence. And there is a subtitle here called "What's Love Got to Do with It?" And this really struck a chord with me when I was reading it on the plane on the way to Roma. So let me read this to you, and I hope you appreciate it as much as I do, because I really recommend this book. And also we're going to be speaking to the author of it in a few minutes. So let's check this out. What's love got to do with it? Love is the one emotion so often discussed, but elusively defined. It's different for so many, but lauded by all, it seems. Love is the funnest emotion because it can be the defining feature of every relationship that exists, with your pet, your best friend, a lover, your colleague. Even for material things that you can so desperately love, like kids with a stuffy, or a college kid with their car. I remember the familiarity and connection I felt for my first car, Mabel, a burgundy '88 Mustang, sporting a slightly rusted-out hatchback. That old girl and I drove many miles, and she held many tears. I loved that car. When it comes to our children and our intimate life partners, love is apparently the goal. And you can see that when we consider this a worthy definition of love. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, and when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. Well, son of a gun, of course, that love-drunk feeling is the desire. Who wouldn't want to be in a place where an emotion can unlock that soul, the best part of us? Even in that definition, I am reminded of the riskiness of the business that is love, because embedded in that huge desire for soul-bared freedom comes huge responsibility, the trust and respect part. Because, sweet mother, when you are gifted the entrance to the soul of another via the love emotion, you'd better not fuck it up. Yet so many of us do. All the time. More on that in a bit. Let's just say that it's the mystical, mysterious one of all emotions. And so many creatives among us have attempted to capture it in music and poems and paintings. Expressing its essence seems slightly different for each of us, but it's undeniably understood when you see it, or maybe better yet, when you feel it. Dun, dun, dun. So there we have it. And that's just a one page 69 of the book, Feeling Seen, by today's guest, Dr. Jody Carrington. And I think I'm going to leave it for there, because now we're going to speak to her and get even more into this topic of feeling seen, which is so important. Are you looking for a new sex toy? If you are, go to satisfier.com and you can use the code Venus to get 30% off anything on the satisfier.com website. So check it out, Venus for 30% off, satisfier.com. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We'll be speaking with Dr. Jody Carrington, author of Feeling Seen, Reconnecting in a Disconnected World. Dr. Jody Carrington, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast, where every day is a climax. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Yes, I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I'm up here in Canada,
Mhm.
and I grew up in a little town in this country, and learning really early about relationships and connection and how critically important they are. And so I got a PhD in police psychology. Actually, I knew that I wanted to do something in this world of trauma and relationship and connection. I thought I wanted to be a police officer because I started to learn what it looks like when organizations don't look after their people. And I fell in love with people who do serving of the most dysregulated amongst us. And when I did my residency, I had to do a rotation with kids. And I said, listen, I'm not a huge fan, despite the fact that I have three of my own. I was not a huge fan of kids. And they said, you're kind of like one. We think you'd be a good fit. So I did a postdoc in child psychiatry, and I spent the first 10 years of my career in a locked psychiatric inpatient unit for kids. And I started to understand about relationship and developmental processes and the influence of trauma on the brain. And then, of course, we had our babies, and I started a private practice and was coaching hockey, and started to consult on really tough cases, the hitters and the kickers and the biters. And I love those babies because we ask this question all the time: what is wrong with this one? What is wrong with this one? What do they have wrong with them? But we never ever ask this question: what happened to them?
That's
So I wrote,
amazing. That's incredible
isn't that good?
insight. Yeah.
Yes, I wrote a few books. They became national bestsellers, and now I speak around the world. And I end up on a podcast with you.
Yeah. And I've just finished your book. The best thing about being a podcaster is that I am such an avid reader. I read 30 books in 2020 in the pandemic, and now I get to read books and interview the authors. So it's a huge privilege for me. I have a whole shelf on my bookshelf, which is just the podcast interviews. Because I know lots of people who interview, because I've been doing lots of press here in Spain where I live, and not many people actually read the book when they interview, but I always read books. So because I'm just fascinated, and just to kind of, I read this in Rome actually. I went to Rome last week, so I was reading your book in beautiful surroundings.
See, I love that my words were in Rome. That feels
Yeah,
so
in the
fantastic.
Vatican. I took the lessons to the Vatican.
Pope, basically. We're on a whole new level
It's a
now.
holy work, holy work. But what really, how it's really how it inspired me. So I went to Rome on my own just for 4 days because I live in Barcelona, so it's kind of easy to pop here and
Yeah.
there in Europe, and I fancied a change. And it really inspired me that the title "Feeling Seen," because I noticed when you're in a tourist place, all these people come up to you just trying to sell you stuff, and it's really annoying. You just want to get on with your day, and you think I'm a tourist, but I'm vulnerable, but I don't want anyone to kind of approach me. But I thought about these people who are just trying to make a day's living, they're in unfortunate situations. And I looked them in the eye and said, no, thanks. So your feeling seen really impacted me in that way. And I'm being more aware when I go to a restaurant or people who serve me or just people I cross in the day, just to kind of look, smile, and just be making everyone feel seen. So I think that's a really beautiful lesson that I've taken away from it, as well as many more that
Oh,
we'll discuss.
oh, I
Mhm.
love that. And I think a couple of things that reminded me, when you're speaking, context is the prerequisite for empathy. So
Uh-huh.
when you know somebody's story, they're hard to hate. And
Mm.
we have never been this disconnected in the history of the free world, your country and mine. We have never not looked away so much. We've never not had so many exit ramps as
Mm.
opportunities to look away. Because here's the thing: in this human race, we are neurobiologically wired for connection. Whoever created this human race, whatever entity, whatever spiritual process, whatever you believe, there's two rules of it. Number one, we are neurobiologically wired for connection. If you disconnect from an infant, they die. Okay, so this,
Mm.
whoever created this said, I'm going to make two rules. One, you are neurobiologically wired for connection. You will do well if you stay connected to each other. Look, be in the same physical proximity. Number two, the hardest thing, I'm going to throw this in for fun, is I'm going to make it very difficult. The hardest thing you will ever do is look into the eyes of the people you love. Okay, so go. Now, one generation ago, mostly two generations ago, still way more in your country than mine, we had much more proximity to each other. The opportunities to look and see. If I think about the square footage of the house that my grandfather was raised in and the square footage of the house in which I raised my babies, it is massively different. And we now have devices. In one generation, we're the first generation of parents with social media to this degree. We have so many opportunities to look away, to just send a text message and an email versus the necessity, order our groceries online, instead of actually having to be in the same physical proximity with another human. And the one thing we will never automate is relationship.
That's true. No AI for that. But I mean, people try
Right.
to create these kind of avatar
Yeah, because we want it.
replacements. Yeah.
We want it, but
Mm,
we just don't know how to navigate the emotion that is around it, because the
mm,
hardest thing we will ever do is this relationship piece, because it takes it, the dynamic process of how you feel and I feel is, there's no script for it, and we can't give away something we've never received. If we've come from multiple generations, for example, of abuse or neglect, trauma, you can't give away something you've never received. If nobody's never looked you in the eyes and said, baby boy, I am so sorry,
mm,
that boy can never look anybody else in the eye and say, I'm sorry. It's not an excuse. It doesn't condone behavior, but context, understanding the story, tends to be the prerequisite for empathy. And
mm.
when we take to our organizational stress these days, empathy is the antidote to burnout.
Yeah. And I love the title of Feeling Seen. I feel that it applies to so many of our human relationships. It's present everywhere. How did you find this title and what inspired you to write this book?
Oh, I love it. So HarperCollins, our publisher, came to me and said, listen, we like the first two books. That's really great. Talking about kids and relationships and emotional regulation. What does the world need right now? And I said, listen, if I were to distill it down to one thing, all anybody has ever wanted, but now more than ever, is to feel seen. And the definition of feeling seen, in my own words, is really this. It's often it's this experience that often happens without words. It often happens even without the ability to hear something. It is really a felt thing when you know that another just sees you, just acknowledges you. And so one of the ways we get there is acknowledgement. The most powerful thing I think any organization, any family system needs is to be reminded of how powerful our ability to simply acknowledge each other is. And you saying, being able to acknowledge the person that's just trying to make a living today in
Mm,
the square, when you acknowledge the kid with the hoodie up and the hair down in the train station, when you just say, hey, nice hoodie, when somebody genuinely comes up to you, particularly a stranger, and says to you, oh my gosh, you have the kindest smile,
mm,
I just thought you should know. Or for those of us with children, when somebody genuinely acknowledges us, not says things like, okay, your kid is a real bully, or I'm really concerned about this, or this is a problem, but they just take the time out of their day. I say this to teachers all the time, take the time out of their day to call and say, I just need to tell you, your kid's amazing. We have hockey's a big sport up here in Canada, and our 13-year-old just quit his hockey team for many, many reasons. And one of the, mostly because he sucks at the game and he hates it. But anyway, one of the kids on the team who has this notorious reputation of being a bully and got in trouble so many times last year, was the only kid the day later in school that came up to him and said, hey, Asher, I'm just checking on you. Are you okay? I'm sad that you quit the team. And so he came home and told me that. And I said, are you kidding me? This kid said that to you? That's my. So I found his mom's number on our website page for the team. And so I called her and I left a message and I said, hey, Jill, this is Jody calling. Can you just give me a call back? And of course, 20 seconds later, she goes with a hello. I said,
mm.
hey, I'm just calling about your kid. And she's like, uh-huh, what?
What's he
And I said, I
done?
just wanted to, yeah, exactly. I
Mm,
just wanted to let you know that I think he's amazing. The decision for Asher to step away from the team this year was so hard on our family because we don't quit anything. But this was, I think, important for his mental health and ours. And it really had nothing to do with the kids on the team. But your boy today made his day. He was brave enough to come up and say that he's going to miss him. And I just wanted to tell you, I think he's amazing. And whatever you're doing, Mom, you're doing something right. And there was a long pause because she was trying not to cry. And she
wow.
said, you don't know how much I needed to hear that. Thank you.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And I said to her, can you make sure you tell him that? She's like, oh, I will. The second he goes through the door, I will be telling him that he did a good thing today. And I think just these days we are so disconnected and so inundated with all the ways the world is falling apart. The mental health crisis, the loneliness epidemic, the wars that are unfolding around us to mammoth proportions. What we forget sometimes is the necessity to lean into each other, because we were never meant to do any of this alone.
Mm, definitely. I actually underlined something at the beginning of your book that reminded me of situations that I've been in recently, like in my personal life. You wrote something like, most every issue anyone has carried into my office has something to do with the often huge disconnect between intention and perception. I thought that was really interesting because I've had some misunderstandings with someone who, some of my actions had a negative impact, but I'm kind of focusing on, but my intention was good. And it's just this huge disconnect. And I thought it was like, just thinking about us, and I was thinking, wow, it's actually a big thing. It's not just me.
Oh my gosh, if I think about, so one of my favorite things to do is marital therapy. Okay, because it's exciting for me. I'd like to get popcorn and just watch it unfold, because generally what's happening is there is a dance in relationship that is, it's amazing to me that anybody is successful at it, because it's so tricky. We intend always to be kind. We intend often to try to fix somebody else's pain or problem. And often it is in the perception that our intention gets lost. And so we tend to be so much better at the beginning of relationships about truly doing that thing of acknowledgement, slowing down long enough of seeing another, really truly trying to understand it and get it right before we offer suggestions or advice. The more you mean to me in an intimate relationship, in a friendship, I don't want you to hurt. So I want to fix it. I want to come up with, okay, stop it. You're being, okay, you know what? You're fine. Relax. Don't be so negative. You're okay. Why don't you go for a run? And our intention is to get them back to a good place, to not let them, be hurting or okay, or to offer advice. We tend to be better at this, generally speaking, with other people's children. We tend to be better at this on our second date. We tend to be better at this in our honeymoon phase of friendship, right? Because generally speaking, on a second date, if you've ever went on a second date, you're trying to engage in an understanding of somebody. So you're like, tell me more. Oh my God, that's amazing. I think about my personal husband. We've been married for 15 years. We have 3 kids on the ground together. He's got a PhD in how to feed cows, beef cattle. Okay. This is a thing here in Canada. You get a PhD how to feed cows. He's judged cattle all over the world. And I was so impressed on our second date. Oh my God, you're amazing. Oh, you got a PhD in this? Oh my gosh, tell me more. And he would say things like, I've had a couple of bloats in this yard. I'm really worried about, agriculture as a whole. Can I ever make an impact? Now, 15 years later, we got 3 kids on the ground. He comes through the door, says exactly the same thing, almost. Okay. I'm so, I'm worried about this farmer. I'm worried about these bloats. Like, is agriculture ever going to change? Can I ever have an impact? It's so terrible. Oh, and me now. Oh my, you're so negative. Is there you think you've had a hard day? I've single-handedly changed the mental health of children in central Alberta. I've got puke in my bra because we had twins. Thank you for that, which we weren't planning for. My pants are too tight because I had the kids. And stop complaining. We lose our ability to regulate emotion, because here's the interesting thing. If he's not okay, I'm not okay. If your friend's not okay, you're not okay. In the beginning of your relationship, you don't really give a shit. You don't have a whole lot in the game. You don't have a whole lot invested. So you're like, tell me more. What's the hard part? All these things. Yeah. But at some point, when it gets a little bit more invested, when we get longer in relationships, so the dance of just slowing down and understanding, I'm so sorry. My intention was to be kind. My intention was to help. And I don't think that's how it landed. That wasn't my, I need you. I miss you. There's so much about this relationship that I love. And those words sometimes are rarely spoken when people are like, you know what, that was unkind of you, or that's not how I took it, or what did you mean by that? Like, thanks for nothing after all I've given you. We tend to miss those moments of just slowing it down. Hey?
Yeah, I think for me, something that kind of like jumped out of the pages as well as when you mentioned that if you use the word but, it's not an apology. Because I've used the word but when I've been explaining that my intention was good, and I was like, oh, how do I get around this? Because for me, I think it's maybe a pride thing, because I kind of know when I'm not doing something entirely correct. I have that awareness, but I think mostly for like 99% of the time, I'm coming out from a good place and a good intention. That doesn't always mean that way, but if someone's had a bad, experience with me for whatever reason, I immediately go to, oh, but my intention was good, because I just don't want anyone to think that I was doing something in a spiteful way. So this is the word "but" comes in there, and it kind of annoys the other person. So it's kind of hard to, yeah.
It erases the apology.
Mm.
Harriet Lerner is a psychologist who she's got some beautiful books out there, and she has one of her most recent books is How to Apologize, and so I bought it for my husband. But
You didn't need it then.
but I think the biggest takeaway for me is just really that, like our intention when we apologize, one of the most powerful words. In fact, okay, I'll back it up a little bit. One of the biggest predictors of couples who make it and couples that don't. John Gottman and his wife Julie have created an institute around data that would look at for 45 years. They have
Mm.
studied marriage, and they say that the one difference, if they were to distill it to one thing, the difference between couples that make it and couples that don't isn't how much sex you have, isn't how much money you make, how much alike or different you are. One thing, your ability to repair is
Mm.
the greatest predictor, because any relationships that matter to you will have conflict. If they don't matter to you, if you haven't spent a lot of time with them, there's no development of the necessity to sort of create that dance of conflict. And so your ability to repair becomes important. And two most powerful words in repairing anything is, I'm sorry.
Mm.
Now, we will always, I mean, I can physically feel it. If my husband and I have just had a knockdown shoot him and I really disagree with the way that he's handled our kids or a conversation in our community, I'll be like, just lose my mind. So when I come back, I'll say, honey, I'm sorry. I really am sorry about yelling and losing my mind. I can physically feel the word but crawling up my larynx, ready to be shooting out of my lips, because I also now want to teach him. But if you wouldn't have started this process, if you would have just, we intend to sort of want to, you're very right in this process, not take full responsibility for this, because typically it isn't our full responsibility. But if we want to engage, if we want to soften another, if we want to regulate their emotion, one of the most powerful ways to do that is to simply acknowledge our role in it. I'm sorry for,
Mm.
and to be very careful in not having a but after that. And sometimes it's hard because then they'll say things like, well, it's about time. Mm-hmm. You should have, and you're like, oh, fuck. But what often happens later, if we can hold that beat, if we can just take that down a notch, if there truly is a relationship there worth working on, they too will come back to the plate.
Mm. Speaking of relationships, I loved your this definition of love in the book, which was we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, and when we honor the spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. I thought that was really beautiful. And then I think it was the chapter after, I can't remember exactly the order, but it made me think about, you talked about the state of affairs and when people, enter into this monotony, and then how it can be, we're very fragile and vulnerable at that time to be seen by someone else. So what is the difference between feeling seen and how much is real love? Because I think sometimes feeling seen can be a big seduction tactic,
Ah,
So
isn't
how
that the
much is
truth?
real? Yeah, absolutely.
I think feeling seen is the first stage in any true love. Okay.
Hmm.
But it is the thing that is the most addictive. So
Hmm.
we truly want to be admired by another. We truly want to be understood
Hmm.
deeply. I mean, all of us just want people to be excited about the things that are excited about, that our soul has learned about this world. And the interesting thing for me, and I've had lots of conversations about this lately, is that I think one of the things that we will witness as in the next generations is that we will see um, an absence in the depth of relationship,
Wow.
because the breadth of relationship is so easy. It's so easy to jump from one to the next and get that very deep sense, that instant gratification of, oh my God, you're amazing. You're so beautiful. Let's spend time together. Um, what we will start to miss, though, desperately, I think, is the depth of relationships. And that when those are needed most is in our most significant time of pain. When we get the news, when we hear that our baby is injured, when we understand that our father is dying, it is the depth of relationship that we want to depend on. It's usually somebody who knows us and those who've weathered the storm. So, for example, when I watch, couples who've been married for 20 years and then engage, they end up having an affair, somebody has an affair, and they get into a new relationship. It's exciting and new. And within the first 6 months, mom dies of cancer or their child is killed in a car accident. That breadth of relationship does not serve the soul. to the degree that it is needed to be held, which is usually only known by somebody who knows you deeply, your story, right? That is often there without words or without a lustful exchange. And sometimes you can engage in that relationship well, but oftentimes it is really the depth of relationships that I'm really interested to see how people are able to navigate. And one of the prerequisites to being able to go deeply into a relationship with somebody is your own ability to regulate emotion, your own ability to stay calm in times of distress. Somebody has to show you how to do that.
Mm.
Emotional regulation is a privilege because the people who've come before you have had to have the ability to stay calm in times of distress in order for you to be able to give it away. So if we see people who, have been marginalized in our world, those who, fall outside of the privileged, those who are most privileged tend to be white, straight, able-bodied men with money. And anybody outside of those things, when you start to check the boxes outside of those things, right? When you don't have access to financial resources, when you don't have access to, emotionally regulated people, when you don't have access to, when you've experienced racism, marginalization in any capacity, you tend to be a more dysregulated human because you do not have those around you. You have to be in fight or flight more often than those of us in this position of privilege, you see? So it makes it very difficult to lean into relationships and trust people because some of our biggest traumas will happen at the hands of people. Our ability to heal also must happen at the hands of people, the very entities that many of us don't trust. So it becomes such a beautiful dance in this human race because we are way more alike than we are different. We all started in exactly the same place. We all heard this first, the heartbeats of our mom. Bum, 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 bum. The rhythmic exchange. And when our most biggest times of distress, what we don't need is words. We need the physical presence of another human being to do this. Okay, okay, okay. And DNA, race is a social construct. DNA in this human race across in your country, in mine, in any other country around the world is 99.98% the same. We all desperately just want to feel seen, regardless of age, race, religion, socioeconomic status, or gender identity. We just desperately want to feel seen. And it is our greatest superpower. The more you give it away to another human being, the healthier you will become.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this these two opposing sensate or um emotions like vulnerability and power, which is kind of interesting because they're both you need someone to cheer you on when you're doing really well, and you need someone who's going to be there when you're vulnerable. Because I think it's hard for people to be vulnerable sometimes, and that's because it feels like you're giving your power away. But then there's also this tendency, let's say on social media, of people being vulnerable just to get likes. So we've got this kind of like conflicting messages right
Oh,
now.
and vulnerability, that word itself is so confusing to many. I mean, what's your thought about, in the book, I talked about this, the most vulnerable emotion is joy.
Mm.
What's your thoughts about that? Because oftentimes when people talk about emotions, they say, oh my God, I'm most vulnerable when I'm sad, when I'm in shame, when I'm feeling fear. But in fact, you're most vulnerable when you are engaging in unbridled joy, right? Belly
Yeah,
laughing with your babies, dancing with your kitchen. Tell me what your thoughts are about that.
well, I think I've had lots of ups and downs in my life, and I think sometimes it's easier to connect with others when we are in a bad place because people tend to have more empathy. But when you're doing well, not many people are around to cheer you on, and that's kind of a sad thing because I've had a few friends kind of I've lost along the way. I lost one friend this year after a 20-year friendship because I was doing really well and I've been in one of the happiest places of my life right now, and she wanted me to be her therapist almost. It was like a very one-sided thing, and I just thought, well,
Yes.
who's around when you're doing really well? So I've just found that they say a friend in need is a friend indeed, but it's actually the ones who are cheering you on when you're doing well and who are not envious of you. Those are the people you want in your life.
I feel
Mm.
like we don't talk about this enough, and I'm so grateful that you're having this conversation because I think one of the thing that surprised me the most in this evolution, into success for my own company and speaking, writing books, doing all these things, is how many people you lose along the way. And
Mm.
I think, in sort of a very spiritual way of understanding this, if our souls are going to continue to grow, and to understand why we're here. I think that, one of the things that I always come back to is the words of Ram Dass. We are all just here walking each other home.
Yeah, I remember that in the book. Yeah.
And
Mm.
if we will play those seasons for this particular friend as they did for you. And if I'm going to continue, fulfilling my greatest purpose, which is to be, I think, a walker, then maybe my purpose was served with her or hers was served for me. And to
Mm.
be able to just release that and allow that to happen doesn't mean that either of us messed it up. It just is. And when you're on this evolutionary journey of your soul to be able to sort of contribute to the world, share your thoughts on this podcast, meet people in all different parts of the world, then you need to surround yourself with people who promote that and
Yeah.
wish well for the people that don't. She will be in her own journey doing those own walkings in those people that
Mm.
need it where she is. And that is the hardest part not to take personally, I think.
Oh, I think I've definitely kind of learned that, and just been. I have to honor myself so much because there's if you don't, then you're just going to be playing
Oh,
small in life. And I love this about
it's
your
a
book as well, about your personal journey, because you talk about, about someone telling you shouldn't swear in public speaking. You're like, I want to be authentic. And then you're saying about the business, setting up a business, like you said, watch me. And is this through a couple of lines? I can't remember where it was exactly, but you've kind of done so many things with your own self-confidence and conviction. And so can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, here's the interesting thing for me, and I'll be so honest about this. The the line between confidence and self-loathing, people think it's very long. Okay, people think like the most confident among us are obviously on this, path where they've like worked so hard or they've got so lucky, and then those that are in this place of self-loathing are way down here, like they think we're pieces of shit or we don't care. Like, do you know? I straddle that line, as does everybody, every single day. I go into this place of I got it. I'm so good. Watch me. To like, oh my God, I'm so fat and terrible. Who do I think I am? Hosting my own podcast, writing a book. You swear too much. Oh my gosh, you're right. I should have that. We assume that it is you arrive at this place of confidence. And I have to tell you, I think there's a few rules along the way that really promote you staying in that place of emotional regulation, of really questioning, am I where I need to be? Can I step into this world with confidence? And I think it really is about paying attention to who you surround yourself with,
Mhm.
because we get constantly inundated in social media about how we're not enough. Right? We've never
Mm.
had this much access to data. We're the first generation of people. We didn't grow up with it. I mean, I was in university, I didn't have a computer. And now, before I get out of bed every morning, I'm scrolling other people's lives, always telling a story in my head about, oh my God, I need to drink more collagen. Holy shit, look at her. She's working out. Oh my God, I'm
Mm.
oh my, I never thought I'd look like this at 50. My poor kids, I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. And why did I marry you? Oh, I could have done so much better. And then before we even get out of bed, our shoulders are up like this, our
Mm.
cortisol is increased. And then we go into the world trying to navigate other people's stories. And we take very little opportunity to just settle back into our own bodies, reflect on the places that we've been and what we do, and really what is our purpose here? We're just walking each other home. And I think the more you can incorporate that grounding practice in this world that is so noisy, you have so much more access to what you know to be true. I am a good human. My intentions were pure. How do I repair when other people perceive them not to be? Who's worthy of the repair? Who are the times where I have to say, you know what? I mean, I always operate by these rules these days, and sometimes they serve me well, sometimes they aren't. Be kind and don't tolerate bullshit in that order.
Mm.
Giving other people the benefit of the doubt is so hard because the ones who need it the most are the hardest to give it to, right? But assuming kindness, leading with it's such a currency these days that people really have a hard time giving away. But it also doesn't mean that everybody walks over you. It also doesn't mean that you're just loving on everybody and you're forgiving everybody. Two very important distinctions, particularly as women, because for women, this is the first generation, I think, ever where our role has been so unclear. 2 generations ago, if you were born with a vagina, you knew exactly your job. Okay, you might
Mm.
have had big hopes and dreams and ideals and all those things, but if I look at my mother, she was one of the smartest businesswomen I've ever met. But she was so cute, right? Her job was to raise the babies. She knew that was number one. Her job was to make a good home. She knew that was very clear. And if you wanted to have a little company on the side, that would be so sweet. Dad will buy it for you and you can manage it.
Mm.
Now, one generation later, I'm the primary breadwinner in our family. Watching my husband navigate that, watching his mom navigate that,
Mm.
watching us as a couple. He's like, well, this is, our company. And no, it's fucking not. It's mine. Right. And he said, well, what is that supposed to be when I would, okay, just a second. What we're working towards is for our family. I am a primary contributor of that. What I built has nothing to do with you. I wrote the books. I speak on the stages. You assisting in building our family life, raising our babies, us coming home together, talking about our hopes and our dreams. That's us. Us saving for our future. That's us. This company that we're going to create for our children. That's us. But you need to understand the importance of giving me the recognition that I did this for
Mm.
years, for generations. Men have been like, you did this, you started the farm, you raised the company, you did the thing. Good. Yeah. Because you're competent and you did that. You did that too. You got a PhD. You're Dr. Aaron Grant. You accomplished all of those things. None of that I did. And I'm so proud of you as a result of that. Right. I'm going to come to your functions, be very proud of you. You made this amount of money. Yes. Amen. That's great. How does that help our family? What are we going to do with it? I too competently put this together. Right? This isn't ours, respectively. Not because I don't want us to enjoy it, not because I'm cutting and running and just storming off. This narrative has to change because so much of the narrative that I think we hold in terms of this whole feminist idea is that women tend to oppress each other often as much as the world oppresses us because my mother-in-law, God bless her, is one of the most remarkable humans I had ever met, and she struggled with the fact that I worked a lot outside of the home. Right? You had 3 babies. Where's your focus? my,
Mm.
I appreciate it, Laura. My focus is on showing our children how women need a seat at the table, how more now than ever an emotional language is what is going to save companies and save lives. And I have that. Well, what's going to happen when the kids get sick? Who's going to help them? Your son, my husband, he knows how to run Tylenol. Right?
Mm.
He also understands that if I'm needed to be here when we navigate them through hard things, then together we do that. I'm still coaching the hockey team. I'm just here half the time. Right?
Mm.
He's very involved. He's tucking the kids in at night. That never happened. Do you understand? So the navigating of roles, we are warriors in this generation because those of us, I mean, still equivocally speaking, we make as women in gender parity roles or roles that are exactly the same, we make 73 to 77 cents on every dollar that a man will make. And if we will increase at this rate of gender parity in the workplace, it won't happen for another 237 years.
Wow.
So there is this sense that we bring something very important to the table, which is an emotional language, which is an ability to identify emotion, relationship, get people back to that vulnerability place, which will make companies more successful today now than ever, rather than building the physical infrastructure of policies and procedures, a language men have spoke for years. And I often say, I have 2 sons and a remarkable husband. This isn't about penises and vaginas. This is about women really stepping into the fact that what we bring to the table has never been this important, because the highest rate of suicide in North America, and I'm not sure about Europe, but in North America, is middle-aged men.
Yeah.
Emotions will not kill you, but not
Mm.
talking about them might. Women
Yeah.
have that skill.
Definitely, definitely. And speaking of skills and your stage life, can you give me some tips on public speaking? I've been public speaking professionally this year, and I'm going to Toastmasters in about an hour to give a speech about my professional speaking, and I haven't even rehearsed it. No, I'm just about to join an agency because I want to change the world one orgasm at a time. This is really my mission. So, what tips can you give me?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I speak. I've been doing this for probably 6 or 7 years now. As a clinical psychologist, I took my expertise, my knowledge, my experience, and sort of put it into what I think people need to know the most. I haven't spoken Spain or Europe yet, so let's maybe see. We'll get on the stage together. Okay,
Oh
we'll
wow,
go there. We'll do that. How does that feel? And
amazing.
then I know I would love to be in Europe. And here's the number one thing: you have so much to offer to the world. And when you feel it in your bones, your audience will too. We often feel so caught up in like, are we going to give them the deliverables? How are we going to say it? And oftentimes, it's good to practice those things, to
Mm.
feel what it looks like in a mirror. I still, honing this craft will be a lifelong game. And I think we often want to have it perfectly, but I try on new material, new jokes. I'm really funny. And so if I do say so myself. And what happens is if you're going to deliver a message and material, you want your audience to experience, sort of come on that journey with you. And so I really love to storytell and incorporate that emotional feeling. If you can make your audience feel your stories and your passion and your hardest moments and your biggest wins, they want more of it. Yeah. So if you make them feel seen by sitting in your audience, they're like leaning into you. And
Everything's
that's
feeling
kind of,
seen. Everything
yeah,
is feeling seen.
right? That's why we called it and so it's like that we're so desperate for it, the bar is so low. And so I would just tell you right now in this season, it is so easy to be a successful speaker if you throw out all of the what you should be doing and really just connect with your audience and give them a message that changed your life. And your intention is to help them be better and do better, and they'll take it if they need it.
Amazing. I'll see how I do tonight.
Yeah, I want to hear it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, because I've been, Toastmasters is like very
Yeah.
in the box, but my topic of female sexuality is very personal. So it's something that's heartfelt. You can't do it with all these kind of all these theatrics that they do.
Rules. Yes,
So,
exactly.
so, I don't actually prepare. I just go on stage and I want to feel comfortable. That's kind of my challenge.
Yeah. And you're
Mm.
talking about a very uncomfortable topic. So
Mm.
being able to do that in and of itself, I mean, I often speak about trauma and relationships and
Mm.
divorce and organizations, how they're messing their people up. And so how you do that often is, when you're comfortable with it,
Mm.
and you can speak about it in a way that will change lives if they just know about it. Let's talk about it. I mean, it is such a taboo subject that everybody has a story behind closed doors, what happens in the bedroom, how we feel really unseen so often. And do we ask for what we need? What does that look like? Oh my God, my mother said, don't you ever speak about that. Keep your legs crossed till the lights are
Nice
off.
girls don't do that.
Especially when you're cat like. And what I think is really critical, right, is that how do we sort of start to rewrite that script
Mm.
and give people permission to rewrite that script? And I think that's all you want your audience to leave with, is knowing a little bit more about that. And like, you know it in your bones, you've experienced it, you believe it, and it's your story. And so tell it. Elizabeth Gilbert, I don't know if you know Elizabeth Gilbert.
Oh yeah,
She's written
definitely.
They Love. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I spoke with her, she is as life changing in person as she appears to be. If you
Mm.
not met her yet, and she just said the world needs your story. Get on
I
stage
love
and
how
tell.
this book kind of ends in that way without giving away a spoiler. But I love that. It's like yes. So I really
Yeah,
love that. So a couple of quick questions for you. As I'm such a bookworm, I have on my episodes I have a book review every episode because I love books so much. So what is the book that changed your life?
there's two. Without a doubt, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I love everything about that woman, and she's really sort of taught me the most about. She's an American author, has written a lot about vulnerability,
Mm.
and so that single-handedly. And then the other one, this is kind of just off the side of my desk that there's more. I could tell you more, but Tuesdays with Maury by a sports writer called Mitch Albom. And he has a line in that book that changed the way I think about the world. He said, death ends a life, not a relationship.
And you that's
And
something in your book as well, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when I think about, the people who come before me and doing well by my ancestors and what my why is, in the loneliness of losing friendships or on a stage all by yourself, I often feel like the importance of, why we're here. And I love that book. I also recently, as we get into the new year, I often revisit James Clear's Atomic Habits. And I think that, there's so many books that when I need inspiration, I don't write, I read.
Oh,
When I
cool.
want to change the way that I think about things, I take other people's idea because there's so much brilliance in this world that often is very distilled down to not very many things, right? Just center yourself, get to the core of yourself. So many answers are right there. And then just be kind, for fuck's sake. That's all we need. So when you find those two things, it often comes back to the most profound works of all time is
Mm.
get grounded in your own body, your own soul, your own spirituality, understand your story well enough to be able to deliver it back to the people. So in your world, whoever they may be, because they're just looking for that too.
Amazing. What about a quote or philosophy or affirmation that you live by?
I would say, I mean, we've talked about it already because it's always up, but it's over my shoulder. We're all just walking each other home is
Mm.
probably the thing that matters the most to me. And then as a businesswoman, I got to tell you, I have this because I think about it all the time. So I'll read it to you. It said, leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. When we
Mm.
are trying to build teams or family systems, investing a lot of time in people's feelings and fears is one of our biggest superpowers. And the way you can do that most easily is when the people around you are distressed or they say, yes, but all the time, you say these three words: tell me more. And in fact, Kelly Corrigan wrote a book called Tell Me More. It's another great read if you want to add that to your shelf. She's phenomenal because it really is about how do we collect other people first before we try to fix them or give them an answer, which is often what we want to do. We want to help. We want to say, like, try this, try this, try this. And we miss that very beautiful stage of acknowledgement.
Nice. So where can people find you?
Well, drjodycarrington.com is the website, and that just links to everything we do on social media. We have a little private community called Everyone, where I try to create a safe space off of social media. And there's lots of resources there for, I got courses on trauma and how to deal with your kids these days. So anywhere, I would love your community to jump into ours because we're doing so many of the same things. And I admire your work so much. So I'm so honored to be able to sit with you tonight.
Oh, me too. It's been a real pleasure. So, Jody Carrington, thank you for joining the Orgasmic Lifestyle podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, me too. Take care.
The book I'm reading now is Live, Laugh, Find True Love, a step-by-step guide to finding a meaningful relationship by Sarah A. Intelligator. And she is a divorce attorney, relationship expert, and now author. I devoured this book. I think I read it in about 2.5 days. It was so well written and written in a way that was kind of simple but eloquent at the same time. And it drew me in. In the first session or sitting, I got to page 50 and I was just, oh my God, it was the perfect book to read after Feeling Seen. Because in Feeling Seen, I was very impacted by the chapters on love, relationships, infidelity. And this was kind of like a good continuation of it to really understand what goes wrong in relationships. I think it's a unique idea, very original idea, that someone who is an expert has seen so many divorces happen, to actually see how these could potentially be prevented. And it's just by choosing the right partner. And she emphasizes fundamental values, which is a very key part. And this is basically, if you don't have fundamental values, then you can kind of predict where things are going to go wrong. And some of those fundamental values might be related to spirituality, frugality, which is very important. I know lots of couples who argue about money. Money is one of the biggest things that people discuss or just don't agree on. That can really cause a lot of tension, not just lack of it, but also having different philosophies according to how you're going to spend it. I remember I was living with a guy years ago and we had very different philosophies on them. I was very frugal and he would spend all of his salary in the first couple of weeks, and the rest of the month he would be asking his family for money, and then he would just pay them all back the first week. Have like that couple of days of getting paid and feeling rich, and then the rest is just kind of scrimping and saving. Whereas I was kind of more sensible, a lot more frugal, and that just caused a lot of tension with us. And I personally couldn't imagine having like a shared bank account, a joint bank account with anyone. But what's interesting in this book is that she talks about teamwork, and if you have all your assets separate, you're not thinking like a team. However, I do wonder, isn't that just a better way to kind of, thinking about if you do get divorced, it's just kind of less messy, surely. I'm going to ask her that question when I interview her next week, which is, I'm very intrigued about that, about, joint assets and the messiness that's involved in separating those assets. Because at the end of the day, I think that if you have all these fundamental values aligned, there's still things can happen, because we are evolving constantly. We're constantly changing in our lives, and it's about finding someone who is on a path that's always going to be compatible with yours, because that's very difficult to assess. But she does go into, trying to identify which of the values which they're going to accompany you throughout life. For example, if you're into traveling in your 20s, you might not be in your 30s or 40s if you want to start a family, because that might not be compatible. So that's a value that might take a back burner for some time. But it's about identifying these things that are going to be present throughout your life. Another area of that can be of potential conflict, would be spirituality and religion. For example, when you have children, you might want to put them in a certain type of school, and your partner might not agree. And also family, which I thought was very interesting. Not just the family you create with someone, but someone how they relate to their own family. For example, if you're very close to your family and the other person isn't, it might be a reminder of what they don't have, and it might bring up a lot of wounds for them. So it's a very eye-opening book, and it just it was just, I found it was very instructive. And also she talks about dating like a job interview, which is something that I find really interesting, and also trying to not be led by those feelings of the chemical reaction that's happening within us when we meet someone. At the same time, I do think that feeling love and genuine desire for someone is something that doesn't come along that easily. So I think it's very natural for us, maybe not the right thing, but to be swept away by these deep emotions that can happen, and that gives us a scarcity mindset, thinking there's not much of this, I have to grab onto it right now, and if I don't do it now, it's not going to come along for a long time. That's something that I think is a very human reaction, because I know that when you fall in love with someone, and then let's say it ends in heartbreak, it does take you a while to get back into a space where you can hold space for someone new, and that's something that is quite hard. And so yes, I think the questions about going on a date and really kind of assessing the compatibility before opening the doors of intimacy is an interesting perspective. But I think we are human, and sometimes we are led by our hearts and our bodies. But it's important to distinguish and discern what the difference is between compatibility and chemistry, which is very, very, very insightful. And yeah, so I think and she gives a lot of examples as well. She really, it's a very clear book, and she illustrates very clearly what these F words are, which are that she calls fail factors, and they are fundamental values, fear, foundation. For example, it's very important to have a very solid foundation in a relationship, and fixing. We should not be trying to fix someone. Fairy tale and family. And yes, it's all about self-reflection and dating as a job interview, and parenting, which is very interesting as well. And then she gives lots of examples of different couples about how they started and where they ended. And you can kind of see from her storytelling that what's going to go wrong, because you can see, because she's illustrated very clearly what these fundamental values are. So you can already tell what the potential incompatibilities and areas of conflict are going to be. So I guess she's seen it over and over again. And what's really sad about divorce is, you can be so in love with someone and have all these plans, and then that person can become your biggest enemy, where you're communicating through lawyers, sending awful emails, threatening, and then you're spending all of your savings that was for the college fund for your children on a divorce. And that's something that's very, very, it's very sad, a sad reality. I remember when I was a child, I had lots of, so I had some friends who had divorced parents. It was very, and there's no really divorce in my family, but Irish Catholic family is kind of like illegal, I think, when I was a kid. But I just seen the sadness of what that, the impact of that on my friends was, having to go from dad's house to mum's house all the time, having to learn 2 telephone numbers back in the day before mobiles, when you were calling a house rather than a person. I remember knowing many different phone numbers off by heart, but for my friends from divorced families, I had to learn 2 numbers. And then the tension of their parents not being able to have a civil conversation and co-parent in a civil way. It was all through letters from lawyers and stuff, and that caused a lot of tension among my friends. However, I have seen examples where it has been more civilized, and people have, still there still might be some pain. But now, as an adult, I have more empathy now from the parent perspective, and I can see that at first I've seen a lot of suffering with my friends who have gone into this family bubble, and sometimes they feel. I think there's some kind of smugness sometimes among my married friends with families, and they seem to be uncontactable when they're having their family weekends. And then suddenly the bubble is burst and they are going through a divorce, and they cannot handle the being alone, the silent house. That's something that, because you're used to having, the noise of children playing, your partner, TV on, and then suddenly half of the time you're in a house in silence, and that can be very difficult to deal with. Because I think sometimes when you're, in a family and you're having all these other things to do, you don't take the time to just be with yourself and see yourself. That's what I've seen from my friends. But once you get over that, I have friends who are having an incredible life. They have, half of their time with their children, and the other half they're really rediscovering themselves as an individual, and that seems to be a great thing to experience as well. But I can imagine that, having a child and then only getting to a point where you only see them half the time could be potentially quite difficult. And I don't even have children, but I can kind of definitely empathize with that. And it's not an ideal situation at all. But at the end of the day, we are human, and it's best to, separate from something if it's really making you unhappy. That's definitely the best thing. But of course, as Sarah A. Interrogator says, it's best to just marry the right person. And this book will definitely help you on that way. I think it's an excellent book. It was so gripping, and it's really made me think a lot. And I think it's really cool that she's kind of made this book to try and, prevent people from coming to her office, which is a very noble intention. So that is Live, Laugh, Find True Love, a step-by-step guide to finding a meaningful relationship by Sarah A. Interrogator, a future guest here on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Now it's time to slow things down as we prepare for this episode's guided affirmations meditation. It's probably not a good idea to listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I am seen, acknowledged, and celebrated. I see, acknowledge, and celebrate others. My presence is noticed and appreciated. Being seen is my birthright. I claim it. I radiate confidence, drawing attention naturally. In every interaction, I am recognized and valued. I feel seen and heard. I am seen, acknowledged, and celebrated. I see, acknowledge, and celebrate others. I shine authentically. Others recognize my light. Visibility is my ally on the path to success. I embrace being noticed for my unique qualities. I attract positive attention effortlessly. I feel seen and heard. I am seen, acknowledged, and celebrated. I see, acknowledged, and celebrate others. I am confidently and unmistakably seen. I am seen and valued for my true self. Authenticity is my magnet for see, acknowledge, and celebrate others. My uniqueness is a powerful asset. I am noticed and appreciated for being me. I radiate self-assurance, inviting connection. Being seen is my natural state. I feel seen and heard. I am seen, acknowledged, and celebrated. I see, acknowledge, and celebrate others. I attract positive recognition effortlessly. I celebrate my worth. Others see and honor it. My authenticity draws in genuine connections. The more I see myself, the more others see me. I feel seen and heard. Are you looking for a new sex toy? If you are, go to satisfier.com and you can use the code Venus to get 30% off anything on the satisfier.com website. So check it out, Venus for 30% off, satisfier.com. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram at instagram.com/venusohara. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.